Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Sunday, 18th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Australia is seeing the Liberal Party reassess its climate change stance following an election loss, with Senator Ruston advocating for updated policies, while staying true to core values, warning against reopening climate debates. The party's deputy leader, Ted O'Brien, is pushing for broader appeal, including recruiting more women and young people, sparking discussions about formal quotas. Meanwhile, the government's refusal rate for freedom of information requests has hit a 10-year high, raising transparency concerns. A woman who helped plan an armed robbery at her former job in Melbourne avoided deportation despite her prison sentence, citing parental responsibilities. In a significant development, an Australian company has started producing heavy rare earth elements, marking the first such production outside of China, amid concerns about China's control over the rare earth market. Turning to the United States, Moody's lowered the country's credit rating to a 1, citing rise in government debt and a growing budget deficit. Former Representative Beto O'Rourke expressed concerns over Joe Biden's decision to run for president, fearing it would lead to Donald Trump replacing him in the White House. There are concerns that a hypothetical President Trump might target statisticians whose data is unfavorable to him, potentially firing economists. Policy adjustments are reportedly being made concerning Syria, Yemen, and Iran, but not regarding Israel. The U.S. ambassador to Zambia suspended health aid due to the theft of US-donated medicines. Ancient Sidanku silk manuscripts, illegally taken from China in 1946, have been returned to Beijing after being held in a U.S. museum for decades. At the Cannes Film Festival, actor Pedro Pascal urged attendees to resist this political pressure and continue expressing themselves freely. Severe tornadoes caused devastation in Kentucky and Missouri, resulting in over 20 deaths and widespread power outages. In China, accusations are mounting regarding its control over rare earth elements, especially as Beijing has banned the export of related processing technology. The return of the ancient Sidanku silk manuscripts underscores historical complexity. The article suggests Trump's policies are weakening a soft power, which is inadvertently benefiting China's influence and making its authoritarian approach seem less concerning. In the Vatican City, Pope Leo XIV celebrated his inaugural Mass at St. Peter's Square, attended by 150,000 people, including Volodymyr Zelenskyy and J.D. Vance. He called for the Catholic Church to be a small leaven of unity and emphasized love and charity, while rejecting forced conversion. Pope Leo is seen as contrasting Trump's divisive style. Despite some initial concerns about his U.S. background, his ties to the global South and support for marginalized communities have gained him international acceptance. Finally, in Zambia, the U.S. ambassador announced the suspension of health aid due to the theft of US-donated medicines, expressing his disappointment during a press conference. Ukraine faces the looming threat of a protracted war with Russia. Despite ongoing negotiations that have so far yielded little progress, fueling doubts about Moscow's genuine commitment to peace. Russian negotiators insist on Ukrainian troop withdrawal from all territories claimed by Moscow as a prerequisite for any ceasefire. Former President Trump expressed his desire to personally engage with Putin to resolve the conflict. The Kremlin maintains that a meeting between Putin and Zelenskyy hinges on prior consensus between the negotiating teams. President Zelenskyy and Elena Zelenska attended Pope Leo XIV's inaugural Mass, after which Zelenskyy thanked the Pope for the Vatican's willingness to host peace talks. Pope Leo XIV, referring to martyred Ukraine, advocated for peace and unity. Katerina, Ukraine's sole female combat pilot, undertakes helicopter missions against Russian forces, navigating both enemy fire and persistent sexism within the military. Turning to the United Kingdom, liberal Judaism and Reform Judaism have united to create Progressive Judaism, an inclusive movement that embraces female rabbis, same-sex marriage, and mixed-faith couples, now representing a significant portion of British Jews affiliated with synagogue. Sir Elton John has strongly condemned the government's plans to allow tech companies to utilize copyright-protected material without authorization, denouncing the potential changes to copyright law as a criminal offense. Critics accuse the Labour Party of perpetuating torture policies they once condemned, arguing that current regulations regarding UK support for foreign security services enable complicity in human rights abuses. A second individual has been apprehended on arson charges related to attacks targeting properties linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. British and EU negotiators are struggling to find common ground on several key issues before their upcoming meeting in London, aimed at revitalizing relations following Brexit. Meanwhile, in Poland, citizens are participating in a presidential election conducted under heightened security protocols due to the ongoing conflict in neighboring Ukraine and uncertainties regarding continued U.S. support for European defense. Finally, at the Olympics, Ukrainian high jump champion Yaroslava Mahuchik aims to embody Ukraine's resilience and unwavering fighting spirit on the world stage in Tokyo. Israel, amidst ongoing ceasefire negotiations in Qatar, has launched significant new ground operations in Gaza, backed by aerial support. These intensified attacks have led to the deaths of hundreds of Palestinians recently, including at least 103 overnight in strikes throughout the Gaza Strip, according to hospital and medical sources. Women and children were among those killed in a strike that hit a refugee camp, igniting several tents. Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis received the bodies of 20 people killed in airstrikes, hitting houses and tents sheltering displaced families in the Mawasi area. Gaza's health ministry reports that all public hospitals in the northern part of the territory are out of service, with the Indonesian hospital reportedly under siege by Israeli forces. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated a willingness to consider a deal that would involve ending the fighting, but under conditions that Hamas has repeatedly rejected. Ceasefire talks in Doha now include discussions about either ending the war or establishing a truce. Human rights. Attorney Noura Erakat has urged on member states to use their authority to end Israel's war on Gaza, asserting that there is sufficient law for the United Nations to intervene. The Italian government has voiced strong disapproval of Israel's actions, with Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani stating they no longer want to see the Palestinian people suffer. In the UK, Lib Dem MP Leila Moran is urging the government to align its tougher rhetoric on Israel with tangible actions, warning of cruel destitution in Gaza. She is calling for recognition of a Palestinian state and appealing for assistance for the family of an NHS doctor trapped in northern Gaza. Yuval Raphael, Israel's Eurovision entrant and a survivor of the Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023, resolved to pursue her dream of becoming a professional singer. Pro-Palestine protesters were assaulted and dragged away for shouting "Free Palestine" during Israel's performance at Eurovision. Before the Arab League summit, Iran's Al-Quds Force Commander Esmail Ghani visited Baghdad, conveying messages of support for Iranian-American negotiations and a demand for the lifting of sanctions on Iran. India's space program faced a setback as a mission to deploy a new Earth observation satellite failed due to a third-stage technical malfunction. Vodafone Idea is contesting the Indian government's refusal to waive over $5 billion in outstanding payments. Reciprocating similar restrictions, The Indian government has limited imports from Bangladesh following the cancellation of a 2020 agreement allowing Bangladesh to export cargo through Indian land routes. A fire in a Hyderabad building, reportedly caused by a short circuit, resulted in 17 fatalities. Ali Khan Mahmoodabad, a professor at Ashoka University, was arrested after a BJP youth leader complained about a social media post regarding a military operation in India-administered Kashmir. Residents express ongoing anxiety about the root causes of conflict and the risk of renewed violence, despite the current fragile peace. Reena Begum returned to her home in Kashmir to find it destroyed after she fled artillery fire from across the border. Indian foreign policy towards Jammu and Kashmir is under scrutiny, considering statements made by the U.S. President, historical context, and the possibility of dialogue with Pakistan. The article highlights that no battlefield solution exists for India's issues with Pakistan and how escalations could impede India's rise. The U.S. Embassy in India cautioned individuals overstaying their visas, warning of potential deportation and future travel bans to the U.S. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security reminded foreign nationals in the country for more than 30 days of their obligation to register under the Alien Registration Act. Turning to India-Canada relations, the appointment of 4 Indian-origin politicians to key positions in the Canadian cabinet has sparked optimism for a potential reset in the relationship between the two countries. Finally, the perceived success of the J-10C in a clash between India and Pakistan is being viewed as evidence of China's air superiority and a shift in China's military approach. Russia has escalated its military actions against Ukraine, initiating a major drone offensive that marks one of the most significant aerial assaults since the 2022 conflict began. The drone strikes, which caused at least 1 fatality, unfolded against a backdrop of nascent diplomatic engagement, including the first direct peace negotiations between Ukrainian and Russian representatives in 3 years. Despite these preliminary discussions, Russian forces launched attacks in Ukraine's Sumy region shortly afterward. A total of 273 drones and decoys were deployed, with Ukrainian forces reportedly intercepting 88 and losing 128. The assault coincided with a meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and J.D. Vance in Rome. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio communicated with his Russian counterpart, focusing on prisoner of war exchanges and ceasefire possibility. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has announced intentions to discuss potential Ukraine peace proposals with Putin, and Marco Rubio also suggested the Vatican as a potential venue for future peace talks, following Pope Leo's offer to mediate. Turning to the European Union, EU ministers are pushing for a coordinated response to Russia's shadow fleet operating in the Baltic Sea, which is estimated to transport a substantial portion, up to 85%, of Russia's oil exports. The EU is anticipated to impose sanctions on roughly 180 ships, increasing the number of sanctioned vessels to 350, as part of ongoing efforts to apply economic pressure on Russia. China has levied anti-dumping duties on plastics imported from the United States, the European Union, Japan, and Taiwan, with the U.S. facing the highest duty at 74.9%. Nobel laureate Giorgio Parisi will take on a complexity sciences role at Beihang University's Hangzhou campus in Zhejiang. Chinese companies are collaborating with African governments to fund infrastructure projects, aiming to reduce financial risk and ease debt. Tourism spending in China is rising due to concertgoers traveling to different cities for performances. Air sports company NIP is expanding into Abu Dhabi, targeting a global audience, with co-founder Hicham Shaheen noting that a significant portion of NIP's audience is now outside China. China is using incentives and penalties to bolster military enlistment and discourage draft evasion, including restrictions on a 20-year-old who attempted to avoid serving in the armed police force after enlisting. The nation is investing significantly in cultural heritage to become a cultural superpower, contrasting with declining investments in the US and other countries. The term Indo-Pacific has been described as a strategic Western rebranding, originating with a German geographer favored by Hitler and later popularized by a former Japanese PM Moody. Turning to the United States, President Trump suggested that China and Walmart should bear the costs of tariffs instead of raising consumer prices, following Walmart's warning about potential price increases on goods like bananas and child car seats. Trump's trade policies with China are described as contradictory, portraying China as both an adversary and an economic partner, leading to confusion about his global economic vision. Japan is currently facing challenges as Prime Minister Ishiba's support has dipped to 27.4%, according to a Kyoto poll, triggered by rising rice prices. Automaker Nissan is planning early retirements and considering plant closures in Kanagawa Prefecture as part of a restructuring effort. To enhance its diplomatic efforts, Japan aims to improve the treatment of culinary diplomats by creating new chef positions with better conditions starting in July and taking effect next January. Further restrictions are being considered on foreign driver's license conversions, particularly targeting Chinese nationals using tourist visas. The Japan Meteorological Agency is looking into artificial intelligence to improve weather forecasting accuracy. Efforts to promote a Mount Fuji Instagram spot are struggling due to over-tourism, with residents citing illegal parking and noise. A recent survey shows that 60% of people in Japan admit to phone addiction, especially younger people, negatively impacting well-being since the pandemic. In international relations, Japan and the United States have agreed to hold regular talks, ideally twice a year, to boost security cooperation. A poll reveals that 81% of people in Japan feel uneasy about Donald Trump's second presidency. In the business and environmental sector, Laurent Patouillet, CEO of Agnes B. Japan, is working to evolve the brand with a stronger emphasis on environmental sustainability. Shota Ikeda, an advisor on Japan's climate goals, is advocating for emissions reductions of at least 75%. Iran remains steadfast in its nuclear ambitions, vowing to continue negotiations with the U.S. despite President Trump's tough stance. Arab leaders are urging President Trump to seek a diplomatic resolution regarding Iran's nuclear program. President Trump is acting independently of Israel on key regional issues, including Iran, Gaza, Syria, and Yemen, marking a significant shift in foreign policy. His recent visits to Arab nations, Iran's regional rivals, have worsened the country's energy and economic woes. Compounding these issues, the Iranian government has warned of imminent water shortages. In the United Kingdom, 3 Iranians face espionage charges for allegedly aiding Iranian intelligence between August 14, 2024 and February 16, 2025. The UK has disrupted 20 Iran-backed plots since 2022, uncovering potentially lethal threats. Poland is currently gripped by a pivotal presidential election, the outcome of which will significantly shape the future trajectory of Prime Minister Donald Tusk's pro-European coalition government and its capacity to enact crucial reforms. The Conservative President Andrzej Duda has often stymied the government's progress since it assumed power approximately 18 months ago. Key issues dominating the campaign include foreign policy under Prime Minister Tusk, LGBTQ rights, and abortion access. Rafał Trzaskowski, the pro-European mayor of Warsaw, is the frontrunner in the initial round, though his advantage over conservative historian Karol Nawrocki has diminished recently. A pro-European candidate is widely anticipated to emerge victorious in Sunday's first round of voting. Romania is currently gripped by a close presidential runoff election. George Simeon, the leader of the hard right, Nationalist Alliance for the Unity of Romanians, or is challenging incumbent Bucharest Mayor Nicu Zordan, a pro-EU centrist. The outcome remains uncertain, with polls suggesting a tight race that carries significant implications for the pro-EU and NATO member nation, potentially even impacting the European Union. Portugal is experiencing political turbulence, heading to its third general election in 3 years. A fragmented political landscape has made stable governance elusive. The Social Democrats, allied with the Popular Party, recently lost a confidence vote after less than a year in power. This defeat triggered the snap election. Immigration and the cost of living crisis are key issues for voters. The election's outcome remains uncertain, posing challenges to restoring political stability. South Korea is witnessing political discourse around presidential term limits. Lee Jae-myung's proposal for a 2-term presidency to decentralize power has garnered significant support, with polls indicating 51% approval. The nation's art market is also experiencing a surge in interest, particularly in historical pieces. Calligraphy by An Young-gun, the independence activist, fetched record auction prices in Seoul. In the realm of digital media, older South Koreans are increasingly becoming content creators on platforms like YouTube, offering life advice and redefining perceptions of aging. In legal news, 2 individuals were arrested for allegedly blackmailing soccer star Son Heung-min with false claims of pregnancy. Germany is currently facing a manhunt as police seek an individual who attacked and injured at least 5 people in Bielefeld. Meanwhile, Chancellor Friedrich Merz has unveiled ambitious plans to bolster the Bundeswehr, with the stated goal of transforming it into the strongest conventional army in Europe. Shifting gears to sports, the United States triumphed over Germany with a 6-3 victory at the Ice Hockey World Championship, overcoming a determined German team despite the USA's initial 3-goal lead. Connor Garland's power play goal in the third period proved to be the game winner. Bosnia and Herzegovina's ammunition manufacturers in Gorazde are on the brink of collapse. This is due to tariffs imposed by the United States on their exported goods, severely impacting their financial viability and operational capacity. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates is expanding its influence in Africa. The UAE is boosting investment, increasing aid, and strengthening its overall presence. This move comes as the United States and other major economic powers scale back their engagement across the continent, creating a strategic opening for the UAE. Switzerland celebrated a victory at the 2024 Eurovision Song Contest in Malmö, Sweden, with Nemo, the Swiss representative, taking the top prize. Nemo, who identifies as non-binary, voiced optimism that their win would foster greater understanding and acceptance for non-binary people. The political undercurrents of Eurovision were also evident, as a Palestinian flag was displayed during Norwegian singer Kyle Alessandra's performance in Basel, Switzerland. Canada has appointed Anita Anand as its new foreign minister, leveraging her academic background, crisis management skills, and commitment to inclusive governance on the international stage. Finance Minister François Philippe Champagne clarified that Canada has not removed all tariffs on US goods, despite pausing some categories. 70% of the counter-tariffs implemented in March are still active. Okay, I understand. I will provide immersive yet detailed news summaries, beginning each key event with the country name naturally within the first sentence. I will ensure a natural transition between countries, using short, clear sentences and prioritizing concise yet expressive narration. I will avoid phrases like finally, lastly, or in conclusion, unless genuinely the last entity. I will strive for accuracy and completeness, including all critical details unless extremely repetitive, and exclude isolated incidents unless they have a significant geopolitical, economic, or policy impact. I will also avoid using bold italics or special formatting for country names or entities. The United States recently concluded a significant diplomatic tour in the Gulf region, resulting in over $2 trillion in investment agreements, marking a key foreign policy initiative for the president's second term. Turning to Syria, security forces have initiated raids targeting Islamic State, ISIS, hideouts in Aleppo. At least one militant was killed during the operation, and several others were apprehended. This marks the first instance of the Islamist-led government directly confronting ISIS within the city limits, signaling a potential shift in internal security dynamics. Brazil recently saw a major development in law enforcement, with authorities, in a joint operation with Bolivian police, capturing a key leader from a major Brazilian criminal syndicate in eastern Bolivia following a 5-year search. Shifting focus to international relations, during President Lula's visit to Beijing, he met with delegates from Norinco, a major Chinese defense firm. Norinco has expressed interest in purchasing a substantial stake in Avibras, a Brazilian aerospace manufacturer, potentially reshaping Brazil's defense industry landscape. Austria celebrated a major win as Johannes Pietsch, performing as JJ, captured the Eurovision 2025 Song Contest with his song Wasted Love. His performance earned 436 points, marking Austria's first victory since Conchita Wurst's win in 2014. Jay's operatic, pop style, and distinctive falsetto voice propelled him to the top spot, surpassing entries from Israel and Estonia. Rwanda saw the return of 360 refugees, mainly women and children, from eastern Congo, facilitated by the UN Refugee Agency. These individuals have been living in Congo since the Rwandan genocide of 1994. The repatriation effort is part of a broader UN initiative planning to return around 2,000 Rwandan refugees in total. 5 years post-Brexit, the United Kingdom and the European Union are contemplating a defense pact, signaling renewed cooperation amid concerns about a potentially isolationist United States under a returning Trump administration. Meanwhile, China's e-commerce giants, such as Temu and Shein, are aggressively expanding their footprint in the European Union. Their advertising expenditure has surged by as much as 70%, marking a significant push into the EU market. This expansion comes as trade relations with the United States face growing uncertainty. France is set to build a supermax prison in French Guiana, a move intended to isolate dangerous criminals like drug lords and Islamist extremists. The French Eurovision performance included Luan singing Maman, a poignant tribute to her mother, who passed away from cancer. Turning to Canada, the nation is grappling with rising concerns over foreign interference in its election. Accusations are mounting against China for allegedly meddling in recent electoral processes. These allegations have spurred debates about election security and the integrity of the democratic process. Meanwhile, Brazil is experiencing a surge in deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. Environmental activists are raising alarms about the escalating destruction, which threatens biodiversity and contributes to climate change. The government is facing increased pressure to strengthen environmental protection measures. In the latest from Germany, the government is facing scrutiny over its energy policy. A recent decision to phase out nuclear power has sparked debate about energy security and reliance on fossil fuels. Critics are questioning the long-term sustainability of the country's energy strategy. The Philippines Vice President Sara Duterte has stated her readiness to confront an impeachment trial overseen by the 24-member Senate. Aiming to strengthen its defense and lessen reliance on the United States, the Philippines has procured missiles from alternative international manufacturers. Shifting focus to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing increasing pressure regarding housing affordability. New policies are being debated to address rising costs. These policies aim to increase housing supply and curb speculative investment. In the United Kingdom, the government is grappling with ongoing debates about its post-Brexit trade relationship with the European Union. Negotiations continue as both sides seek to optimize economic ties. Key sectors like agriculture and finance are at the center of these discussions. Turning to developments in Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is pushing for stronger environmental regulations to combat deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. These measures include increased funding for enforcement and incentives for sustainable development. Brazil is also seeking international cooperation to protect its vital ecosystem. The Netherlands is in mourning after the passing of Johnny Boer, the acclaimed Michelin-starred chef of delivery. In other news, Claude, who will represent the Netherlands at Eurovision, is a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Claude's journey from refugee to pop star has captivated the nation. Argentina is grappling with severe flooding in Buenos Aires province, a crucial agricultural region, displacing thousands of residents due to relentless rainfall. Turning to China, Cuba's deputy foreign minister has firmly denied claims that China is constructing spy bases in Cuba aimed at surveilling the United States. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, panda enthusiasts bid farewell to Fuwa and Feng Yi, a beloved panda pair that arrived in 2014 to commemorate 40 years of Malaysia-China relations, and who subsequently produced 3 offspring at Zoo Negara. In Congo, artisanal miners in Rubaya are engaged in the manual extraction of coltan, a vital mineral essential for electronics and defense industries, amidst a landscape punctuated by generators and intensive labor. Cuba's deputy foreign minister has refuted allegations that China is constructing spy bases in the country with the intention of monitoring the United States. Estonia's Eurovision entry, Espresso Macchiato, performed by Tommy Cash, has drawn criticism in Italy for its perceived cheesy Italian accent. Finland experienced a tragic accident when 2 civilian helicopters collided in western Finland, resulting in the death of all 5 people on board. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, participating in his first major summit, urged Europe to do everything possible to keep the Americans on our side during discussions in Albania focused on European security and the ongoing situation in Ukraine. In Indonesia, a court has ruled that public officials and corporations can no longer sue critics for defamation under the Electronic Information and Transaction Act law, a decision hailed as a victory for free speech. Italy is home to the ancient image of Our Lady of Good Counsel from the Marian shrine of Genazzano, prominently displayed near the altar. The U.S. Embassy in Libya has refuted a report suggesting the U.S. government planned to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to Libya. Duchess Ula. Malaysia saw panda enthusiasts bidding farewell to Fuwa and Feng Yi, a panda pair that arrived in 2014 to celebrate 40 years of Malaysia-China relations and produced 3 offspring at Zoo Negara. Malta was required to modify the lyrics of its Eurovision entry, Mariana Conte's serving, due to the original title's vulgar connotations. Morocco is intensifying its efforts to manage the millions of stray dogs that roam the country's streets through humane methods. North Macedonia and the UK have solidified an agreement to strengthen their ties, with Prime Minister Hristijan Mikoski emphasizing that this partnership signifies much more than a simple bilateral engagement. Pakistan faces increased financial scrutiny as the IMF has imposed 11 new conditions, bringing the total to 50, and warned the country about potential risks to its existing bailout program. Somalia is reeling from a suicide bomb blast in Mogadishu, which claimed the lives of at least 10 people. The bomber targeted a queue of young recruits registering at a military base in the capital. Sri Lanka is the focus of UK Foreign Office support for a British woman, Charlotte May Lee, 21st, who was rudely arrested for allegedly attempting to smuggle 46 kg of cannabis, strain kush, into the country. Sweden celebrated the release and return of a Swedish journalist from Turkey, where he was arrested for covering nationwide protests and convicted of insulting President Erdogan. Meanwhile, Kai, representing Sweden with the song Barabarabastu, is currently favored by gambling companies to win Eurovision. The Taliban in Afghanistan is under scrutiny as a UN report reveals that the rights of religious and ethnic minorities, as well as all women, are under constant attack by the ruling authorities. Turkey saw the release and return to Sweden of a Swedish journalist who was arrested for covering nationwide protests and convicted of insulting President Erdogan. The United Kingdom's Foreign Office is providing support to a British woman, Charlotte May Lee, 21st, following reports of her arrest in Sri Lanka for allegedly attempting to smuggle 46 kg of cannabis strain kush into the country. Furthermore, North Macedonia and the UK have agreed to boost ties with Prime Minister Christian Mikoski, noting that this partnership is more than a bilateral engagement. The United States, under the Trump administration, welcomed Afrikaner refugees through a WHAM refugee resettlement plan, even as the program remains on hold for others. Additionally, the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli has refuted a report suggesting the U.S. government planned to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to Libya. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.